What if I told you sometimes it's not your effort that's the problem, it's the person judging it? Because in ninth grade, I had one teacher who decided she didn't like me before I ever said a word. And once that happens, everything you do starts looking wrong. I wasn't a bad student. Sure, I wasn't perfect. I had days where I didn't give 100%, but most teachers, they still respected me. Some even liked me. Except her, my honors English teacher. From the very first week, I could feel it. The way she'd pause before calling my name, the way her tone shifted when she spoke to me, the way she looked at me like she had already made up her mind. And the worst part? She had a reason. I was an athlete. Actually, I played 3 sports, which meant I missed class sometimes for games, but that wasn't the only thing. I also missed for academic competitions, quiz tournaments, and science events, but she didn't care about that. To her, I was just another athlete who doesn't take school seriously. And once she labeled me that, she started proving it. Away games became my punishment. Every time we had a long trip, the next day she would suddenly assign double the homework. Not randomly, not occasionally, every single time. And here's the thing, she didn't even check homework daily, but somehow, magically, she always checked it right after away games. It wasn't a coincidence, it was intentional, and she never said it out loud, but I felt it. She wanted us to fail. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I should try harder. Maybe I was falling behind. But then something didn't add up. My essays. I would spend hours on them, carefully writing, editing, rewriting, and then I'd get them back. 70s, low 80s. No comments, no corrections, no feedback. Just a number. Meanwhile, the girl next to me, her paper would be covered in red ink, and she'd get a 92. That's when it hit me. It wasn't about the work, it was about me. So one day, I asked her. I still remember standing there, holding my paper, trying to stay calm. "Can you explain why this got a 72? She didn't hesitate. She looked at me and said, "You're only working at about 70% of your potential. Other students are giving 90%. I froze. Because that didn't answer anything. So I asked her something that changed everything. So my paper could actually be better and still get a lower grade? She looked me dead in the eyes and said, yes. That was the moment I realized I wasn't being graded on my work. I was being graded on her opinion of me, and no matter what I did, I would always come up short. But here's the twist. Despite all of that, she recommended me for an advanced writing class, a class students weren't even supposed to take until the next year. So tell me, how does a student who's only giving 70% suddenly qualify for something advanced? Exactly. Even she knew I was good. She just refused to reward it. And that should have been the worst part. But it wasn't. Because near the end of the year, she gave us one opportunity, extra credit. And this is where everything changed. We had to attend a live performance of Antigone at a local college, write a 2,500-word analysis, connect it to everything we learned in class, and submit proof we were there. Tickets, program, everything. It was due Monday. Simple, right? Except for one thing. The play only ran from Friday to Sunday, and that same Monday, I was representing the school at the biggest academic competition of the year. Not optional, not skippable. You had to qualify to even be there, and I did. So I went to her, again and again, for an entire week. I'll be gone Monday. What should I do? Every time she gave the same answer. Turn it in Tuesday morning. Clear, direct, repeated. So I trusted her. That was my mistake, because I had no idea that decision was about to cost me everything. I did everything right. I went to the play, wrote the paper, represented my school, but when I showed up Tuesday morning to turn it in, she looked at me and said, something I'll never forget. I don't remember saying that. And just like that, everything started falling apart. I trusted her. That was my biggest mistake. Because for an entire week, I kept reminding her, I won't be here Monday. Not once, not twice, at least 4 different times. And every single time she gave me the same answer. Turn it in Tuesday morning. Simple, clear, no confusion. So I planned everything around that. Friday night, after practice, my mom rushed me home. I barely had time to breathe, shower, change, grab something to eat, then straight back out the door, to a play I didn't even have time to process. But I went anyway, because this wasn't just extra credit. This was my chance. My chance to prove that I wasn't the 70% student she thought I was. The theater lights dimmed, the play started, and while everyone else was just watching, I was working, mentally taking notes, connecting themes, breaking down characters, because I knew if I messed this up, she would use it against me. Saturday afternoon, I finished the paper, 2,500 words, carefully written, revised, polished, not rushed, not sloppy, the kind of work that should have been undeniable. I even saved the file multiple times. I remember looking at the screen and thinking, this is it. She can't ignore this. Monday came, competition day, the biggest one of the year, the one you had to qualify for, the one that actually meant something. And I showed up ready. By the end of the day, I placed first in one category and second in another. I should have felt proud. I should have been happy. But in the back of my mind, I was still thinking about that paper, because something about her made it impossible to relax. Tuesday morning, 7 a.m., before workouts, I walked into school early holding everything: the paper, the ticket, the program, proof, effort, time, all of it. I walked into her classroom, calm, respectful. Hey, I'm here to turn this in. She looked at me, paused, and then said something that didn't make sense. This is late. At first, I thought she was joking. I even gave a small smile. But I told you, you told me Tuesday. Her expression didn't change. I don't remember saying that. That moment felt unreal, like my brain needed a second to catch up, because I knew what I heard. I knew what she said. Not once, multiple times. I asked you all week. My voice started shaking. You told me Tuesday, every time. She crossed her arms. Well, it was due Monday. Just like that. Conversation over. Decision made. No discussion. No consideration. I tried again, explaining everything. The competition, the schedule, the fact that I physically couldn't be there Monday. Her response? Cold, detached, unmoving. Another student turned it in. That one sentence hit harder than anything else, because she knew that student lived across the street. She knew I lived 20 minutes away. No car, no way to just drop it off. But she said it anyway. Then she added another reason. You could have sent it with your mom. My chest tightened, because that didn't even make sense. Why would I? You told me Tuesday. Why would I go out of my way to fix a problem that didn't exist? And then came the last excuse, the one that almost made me laugh. You could have written it Monday night. That's when something inside me snapped, because now she wasn't just ignoring the truth, she was rewriting it. So I pulled out proof, opened my document, showed her the file metadata. Last saved Saturday afternoon. I thought this would change something. I thought logic would matter. She didn't even look at it for more than a second, and then she said, "It doesn't matter." Just like that. Hours of work, gone. Time, gone. Money for the ticket, gone. My mom's effort, meaningless. And the worst part, she didn't even hesitate. No guilt, no second thought, nothing. I walked out of that classroom trying not to cry. But it wasn't just about the grade anymore. It was something deeper. It was the realization that no matter what I did, I was never going to win with her. And that's when the anger started. Not loud, not explosive, just quiet, building, sitting in my chest. Because if she wanted to treat me like I didn't matter, then fine, I would remember that. I thought that was the worst thing she could do to me, but I was wrong. Because a few weeks later, she gave us our final exam, and what I wrote on that paper didn't just shock her, it broke her. After that day, something changed in me. Not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, permanently. I stopped trying to win her approval, because what's the point when the game is already rigged? Before, I used to double-check everything, every essay, every assignment, every word, hoping maybe, this time, she'd see me differently. But now, I just did the work. No extra effort to impress her, no overthinking, because I finally understood something. It was never about the work. It was about control, and she had it. The power to grade, the power to decide, the power to make me feel like I wasn't enough, even when I knew I was. But here's the thing about pressure. If you keep pushing someone unfairly long enough, they don't break, they change. Weeks passed. The class felt heavier, not because the work got harder, but because every interaction felt personal. She would make comments, small ones, subtle enough that no one else noticed, but sharp enough that I felt every single one. Some students just don't prioritize academics. She'd say it while looking in my direction. Effort shows. Another glance. And every time, the class stayed quiet, because to them, it wasn't obvious. But to me, it was constant. And I started noticing something else. I wasn't the only one struggling with her. Other students whispered about her grading, about how confusing it was, about how unpredictable she was. But unlike me, they stayed under the radar. They didn't challenge her. They didn't question her. I did, and I paid for it. At home, my mom could see it. She didn't even have to ask. "You're trying too hard for someone who's not being fair," she said one night. And that sentence stayed with me, because she was right. I was exhausting myself for someone who had already decided my value. So I stopped, not caring completely, but caring differently. I focused on what actually mattered, my competitions, my growth, my future, not her opinion. And something weird happened. I felt lighter, but that didn't mean things got better. If anything, they got worse, because when you stop playing someone's game, they notice. Her tone got colder, her patience shorter, her grading somehow even harsher. It was like she was waiting for me to slip, waiting for her to prove me right. And then, final exams were announced. Suddenly, the entire class shifted. People got serious, nervous, focused. But she looked excited, because this was her moment, the one thing she always bragged about. "No one has ever gotten an A on my final exam." She said it proudly, like it was an achievement, like breaking students down was something to celebrate. The class reacted the way she expected, laughs, nervous smiles. But me? I just sat there, quiet, because in that moment, I made a decision, not to prove her wrong, not to impress her, not even to beat her game, but to end it on my terms. The last day before exams, she gave us a few minutes at the end of class. A simple question, almost casual. "What's your biggest wish?" People gave normal answers. Good grades, a break, summer plans. And then I spoke. "I wish for an A on your exam." The class went silent for a second. Then she laughed. Not a friendly laugh, not amused, the kind of laugh that dismisses you. "Yeah," she said, shaking her head, "and I wish for $1,000,000 and not to have to deal with you anymore." The class laughed, but I didn't, because that was it. That was the final confirmation. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't miscommunication. She didn't just dislike me, she meant it. And instead of feeling hurt, I felt something else. Clarity. Because now I had nothing left to lose. No expectations, no illusions, no reason to hold back. And that's a dangerous place to put someone who's been silent for too long. Because when the final exam came, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I was ready, not just to take the test, but to finally say everything I had been holding in all year. She thought the final exam would be her victory, but she had no idea that one question at the end of that test was about to turn everything around, and what I wrote would leave her in tears. Story. Final exam day. The classroom felt different, quieter, heavier, like everyone knew this was the last stretch. 2 hours, 100 questions, and then a small bonus section at the end. Only 5 points. Most people didn't care about that part. It was just filler. Generic questions like, what did you learn? What was your favorite part of the class? Easy points. Safe answers. Forgettable. But for me, that section meant everything. I walked in, sat down, and looked at the test. No nerves, no stress. Just focus. Because at this point, it wasn't about her anymore. It was about finishing this my way. I started answering, fast, confident, clear. All those weeks, all those assignments, all that effort she ignored, it was still there. And question after question, I moved through the test like it was nothing. 20 minutes later, I was done. Completely done. 100 questions. Finished. But we weren't allowed to leave yet. School rule. No one could leave before 1 hour passed. So I sat there, looking at the last section. That bonus question. 5 points. That's it. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could write something safe, something fake, something like everyone else. Or I could finally tell the truth. So I picked up my pen and I didn't hold back. I wrote that I wasn't sure I actually learned anything meaningful because I was never given real feedback. I wrote that my favorite part of the class was knowing it was finally over. I wrote about the grading, the unfairness, the way effort didn't seem to matter. I didn't scream, I didn't insult, but I was honest, painfully honest. I said she was the worst teacher I had ever had, and that the class deserved better. Every word came from a place I had been holding in all year, and when I finished, I didn't feel scared. I felt relieved. The clock hit 1 hour, the bell rang, and out of over 100 students, I was the only one who stood up and walked out. Everyone else stayed, but me, I was done. I stepped outside into the breezeway, sat down, and waited for my mom to finish her exam duty. For the first time in months, I felt calm. But that peace didn't last long, because a few minutes later, I saw her, walking toward me, fast, holding my exam, and when I looked at her face, everything changed. She was crying, not just a little, not quiet tears. She looked shaken. Her eyes were red, her breathing uneven, and before I could even say anything, she said, "Go to the principal's office." Her voice was breaking. Then she turned and walked away. I just sat there for a second, trying to process what just happened, because this wasn't what I expected. I thought she'd be angry, cold, dismissive. Not this. I stood up and slowly walked to the office. On the way, I ran into one of the coaches. He looked surprised. "What did you do this time?" he joked. I gave a small smile, but inside, I already knew this wasn't over, not even close. When I got there, I sat down and waited. Minutes passed, then more, and then she walked in with my mom. She had pulled my mom out of proctoring an exam. That's when I knew this was serious. We all went into the principal's office. Door closed. And what happened next, I'll never forget, because the teacher who spent the entire year acting cold, controlled, unbothered, completely broke down. She was crying, shouting, struggling to even speak clearly, and for the next 45 minutes, everything I had kept inside finally came out. I told them everything. The grading, the favoritism, the assignment she refused to take. And when I finished, the principal looked at her and asked one simple question, a question that ended everything. The room was silent. After everything I said, no one spoke for a moment. Not the principal, not my mom, not even her. For the first time all year, she wasn't in control. She sat there, eyes red, trying to catch her breath. And then the principal finally leaned back in his chair, looked at her, and asked one simple question. How much was that question worth? She hesitated, wiped her face, then quietly said, 5 bonus points. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Because the principal didn't yell, he didn't lecture, he didn't make it dramatic. He just looked at her and said, "Then don't give her the bonus points." That's it. No punishment, no suspension, no big scene, just logic. Because at the end of the day, that's all it was. 5 extra points. All that emotion, all that chaos, all that buildup over something that didn't even matter. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, that's what she thought. A few days later, final grades were released. I checked mine, carefully. 98 on the exam. I missed only 2 questions. Out of the entire grade, I had the highest score. Everyone else, they got their bonus points. Their grades went up, mine didn't. And still, I beat them all. That should have been enough, but then I noticed something strange. One of my old assignments from the second week of school had changed. The grade dropped by 10 points, just enough to shift my final average, 94.4, a B. I stared at the screen, trying to process it, because I knew what my grade was supposed to be. I had tracked everything, every assignment, every score. It should have been higher, an A, but I couldn't prove it. No screenshots, no official record, just my own numbers. And that's the thing about people like her. They don't always lose loudly. Sometimes they try to take one last thing on the way out. And for a moment, I felt it again. That frustration, that unfairness. But this time, it didn't stay. Because something bigger happened. That summer, the school changed the grading system from a strict scale to a 10-point scale, which meant 90 and above was now an A. My 94.4 became an A, just like that. The thing she tried to take from me came back anyway, and not because of her, but despite her. But the story doesn't end there, because after that year, things started changing. She was no longer allowed to assign homework freely. Every assignment had to be approved, reviewed, signed off. And then, 2 years later, she was gone, fired. Because eventually, other students spoke up. What I experienced wasn't just me, it was a pattern. And once enough people saw it, the truth couldn't be ignored anymore. And that's the thing about people like her. They think they're untouchable, until they're not. Looking back now, I don't even feel anger anymore, just clarity. Because she thought she was teaching me a lesson, but she was wrong. She didn't teach me about writing or literature. She taught me something far more important, that sometimes people will judge you unfairly, undervalue you, misunderstand you, and no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to change their mind. So instead, you change your focus. You stop proving, you start becoming. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. She tried to control my grade, but she never realized she was just a chapter in my story, not the ending.